So we're here on the Celtic Lockdown Podcast, and it's episode 3 with current player John Ustabasi. I'd just like to welcome John onto the podcast. We're going to talk about John's career. Obviously, he's only halfway through it. He's still got some time to go. COVID, as long as COVID goes away. So we're just going to start off with a bit about John. So John has Turkish heritage, and if I'm right in saying, you went over to Turkey. You were born in Manchester, but you went back over to Turkey when you were 18, and signed for a club called Bursaspor.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So just tell me a bit about how your career started. Did you have a club over in England, and then how did it come about that you went over to Turkey and signed for Bursaspor? I think it's something to do with your dad, if I remember right.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on. I listened to the first podcast the other day, which was really good. So my dad is Turkish, my mum is English. So I was born in Manchester. Always played for local sides around Manchester and the Warrington area, because I grew up mainly in Warrington, but my parents split up, so I was with my dad on the weekends in Manchester, and then kind of like the midweek with my mum. So I played for Boothstown, which is in Manchester, and then I always played for my school teams and other local clubs around Warrington. But I never actually played for a professional club in my youth career. I was always playing at amateur levels, trying to play for county teams and the school teams and stuff like that. But yeah, I never had the opportunity to experience youth football at a professional level in the UK. So basically, when I was 18, I'd finished sixth form college, and I actually went on holiday with my parents to Turkey. And my dad was good friends with Tugay Kerimoglu. Maybe you might know him. He used to play for Blackburn, centre mid, long hair, really great football player. But when he went to go and visit him, there was a football agent there, and he basically just said, look, I know the president. He's a new president of this team. It was a championship so second tier team in Turkey. And if you want, you can send John to go for a 5-day trial. So obviously my dad kind of jumped at it and said, yeah, okay, we're going to go there, because of we actually met Tugay in Istanbul, and Denizli's kind of more Midland Turkey, and obviously Turkey's quite a big country, so it was quite far away. But anyway, we went there, and then started to train with the first team. Obviously I was only 18 then. And did a couple of friendly games, and we were training twice a day. And I ended up signing there after about a week. But the problem was at that moment, you could only have a limited number of foreign players playing for in that division. Essentially, there was only 3, and they basically didn't want to use one of their foreign players, who's normally going to be like their star player, on a young 18-year-old kid, basically. So I had to go through the process of becoming a Turkish national, because obviously I was born in England. I only had an English passport. So I had to go through the process of becoming a Turkish citizen, and that took forever. We had to go to Turkish embassies in London, why I wanted to become a Turkish national and stuff like this. And obviously, with becoming a Turkish citizen, you have to do a military service as well. So every male in Turkey has to do I think 12 months military service in Turkey. Obviously, there's ways to kind of reduce that and to get out of it. If you go to university, I think it reduces by about 6 months. And then also, if you live abroad, you can delay it until a certain age, and then you can obviously pay for it to just not do it, essentially. So my dad, obviously living abroad, he actually paid to not do it. But back then it was a lot of money. It was like 10 grand to kind of get out of it. obviously he had a son over here and had his job and stuff, so he couldn't do it. So he managed to pay to get out of it. But yeah, I've got all that to come, I suppose. Hopefully I'll be able to save up some money to pay out. I don't think it's 10 grand anymore. I think it's only around £1,000 or something, so it's not too bad. But yeah, I had to go through that process of becoming a Turkish citizen. And then I ended up actually signing forms in the January of 2013, I think it was. So I went over in 2012, the summer of 2012. And I could only train throughout that period. I was never allowed to play any competitive matches. So I kind of trained with the under-21 side, and I stayed there for about 2.5 years. It was in Denizli. Mainly I was kind of working my way up. So I was kind of training with the first team, but playing all of the games in the under-21 team. I think I made like 70 appearances or something like that, and ended up making one first team appearance, which was in the cup. I think I came on in extra time of a cup game, and my first touch, I headed it onto the bar, and it was drawing 1-1. And I just think to myself, like, if that would have gone in, maybe I would have got an extended run in the team, and maybe my career at that club might have panned out differently. But yeah, I ended up leaving after my contract ran out in 2015, just basically because of, at that time I was 21, and I wanted to play first team football essentially. So yeah, I left them then.
So are you going to be doing your military service, or are you hoping to pay out of it?
Yeah, so basically you have up until you are 38 years old to complete it. So I'm 26 now, so I've got 12 years basically to decide whether I want to complete it or to pay to get out of it. So I think that leads up until 2032. So I've got plenty of time to kind of save up the money to kind of get out of it. My plan is not to do the military service and hopefully pay out of it, but you never know what will happen. You might see me holding AK-47s one day, you never know.
So you left Denizlispor, and then you moved to Fiveaside, is that right?
Yeah, Fiveaside. So Fethiye is much more of a holiday destination. It's on the west coast of Turkey, so a lot of Brits will go to Fethiye on holiday, especially in the summer. There's lots of tourists there. So that kind of attracted me to kind of go there, because of when I went to Turkey, I couldn't actually speak any Turkish. So I kind of felt like I was only speaking to the 3 people who could maybe speak English out of the whole squad. So being able to go to Fethiye, I thought maybe it'd be more like England essentially. Brits abroad. People with the tops off roaming around the streets and stuff like that. But yeah, and hopefully more kind of first team opportunities was going to come from it. So the actual coach who signed me when I joined Denizli was the coach of Fethiye at that time. So I also thought like it would maybe be a chance to kind of go there and impress. So yeah, I went there and I signed, I think it was a 2-year contract. And the first year went all right. I think I made like 10 to 15 appearances in the first team. I think in a season is about 30 odd games. So a lot of the times I was in the squad, but maybe not getting on, or sometimes I was in the first 11, or sometimes I was on the bench. So that was a good kind of stepping stone to what kind of men's football was like, albeit abroad, obviously. And yeah, it was a lovely place to kind of go, especially in the summer. You could go to the beaches and chill out, and there was always like activities to kind of get involved with, like water sports and loads of restaurants to go to. So it was a really nice place to kind of live. Obviously in the summer it's really good, but then in the winter when everything's kind of closed down, it was a bit boring. But ultimately I think it was a good experience. So the first year was quite good, and then in my second season I started to play a lot more, so I was more in the first 11, and I pulled a good string of games together. But it came to a point where they either wanted. I only had 6 months left on my contract, so it came to the January of 2014, I think. And after pulling together like a good string of games, they wanted me to renew my contract, and that was when it kind of hit like a sticky point, because I always had ambitions to move to England and play in England, and in my mind, it was always the sooner the better. But yeah, there was only 6 months left on my contract, and they basically gave me an ultimatum. They basically said, like, look, you either sign this extension for another like 1.5 years or whatever, or we'll leave you out the squad. You know, you'll have to train with the youth team, and we'll be like really shit to you and stuff like that. So it came to that point where I was like, do I just stay here and kind of just see out the rest of my contract and leave on a free come the end of the season, or do I try and look around for a club now? So I thought, obviously I was young, I didn't want to waste any time, so I decided to kind of leave in January. But obviously there was some kind of punishment for leaving in January. In Turkey, you get offered, your wage and stuff like that, but you never get it consistently. You'll never get your weekly wage every week, or your monthly wage every month, or your bonuses all the time. You'll get it like every now and again, and at that point I was owed like maybe 4 months of the 6 months wages that I was supposed to be receiving, and they basically said like, well, yeah, okay, you can go, but you're gonna have to leave all that money here. So I had to kind of make that decision of do I leave my money and leave now, or do I hopefully try and keep the money but waste 6 months of your career essentially. So yeah, I ended up leaving halfway through that season, and that was when I went to Bursa.
Yeah, so you move on to Bursa. It sort of confuses me, this one, because I like when I look at your Turkish clubs, I know Bursaspor. Do they have a link to club? Is it a club called Yeşil Bursa or something like that, and you play for them?
Yeah, so basically, when I left Fethiye, someone got in contact with me about going to a club, and I only wanted to go for 6 months. So I agreed to go to Yeşil Bursa, which is kind of like a feeder club. So if you imagine, like, for example, I don't know, Newcastle United, and they've got their feeder club in, League One, and they'll send out their young players there. And it's kind of similar to that, but I suppose they have it more abroad. So, they have Barcelona B, stuff like that. But the Barcelona B team doesn't play in like an under-21s league, it actually plays league football. The only thing with that is that they can never go to the same division as Bursaspor. So if they were in one division below and they won the league, they wouldn't get promoted essentially. But yeah, so I ended up transferring to them in the January, and there was a mid-season camp. So at the camp, the Bursaspor players, the actual men's team from the Super League, were in the same hotel as us, and we trained at the same facility during that kind of, because there's a winter break in Turkey, so all clubs go to places with high altitude to get like good training in essentially, and we were in the same place. So we had played like a friendly game. It was my first friendly game with them while I was training, and I played quite well. I think I scored like 2 goals or something. And the first team coach at Bursaspor was actually watching, and after that, he basically invited me to train with the first team. So I was shitting myself basically, because it was a big step up. It was like 3 divisions above, what I was playing at. And obviously at the time, I think I was 20, 22, something like that. So still quite young. But so I ended up training with them for about a week, and I played in a friendly game against some team from Iran, I think, or something like that. I can't really remember. It was some random team. And basically after the 1 week of training with them, the first team coach basically wanted to sign me for Bursaspor. So I ended up signing like a pre-contract arrangement, was that for the 6 months I'll go to Yeşil Bursa, because they needed a player in my position, and I already basically agreed to go there. And then after that contract runs out, I'll become a Bursaspor player. So I signed a 6-month deal with Yeşil Bursa, and then after that had finished, I became a Bursaspor player on a contract for 2 years. So yeah, so when I came to Yeşil Bursa, that kind of motivated me basically to do well. But unfortunately, my first game with Yeşil Bursa a few weeks later, within 5 minutes, I had a collision with the goalkeeper and I broke my arm. I remember a ball was being crossed in from the left wing, and I was just looking, to try and head it in essentially. And the keeper's gone up to collect the ball with his knee, like in front. A lot of goalkeepers do to kind of protect themselves. And obviously, last minute, I kind of put my arm in the way like that. And his knees just smashed straight into my arm there, and it's just completely snapped that bone. I remember getting up, and the physio was like, "Oh, can you continue? Can you continue?" I was like, "I don't know. My arm feels just so weird." So we strapped it up on the side because the bone was sticking out, but obviously I didn't know it was broken. Like when the bone was aligned, it felt all right and strong, but when the bone was like this, I couldn't like clench my fist. It was so weird. And so we basically strapped it up, and it was kind of aligned, and it was all right. So then I was like running on the sideline, thinking I could come on, and my hand was just like basically going like that. It was crazy. So I said like, "Nah, I don't think I can play." So obviously there's 2 bones in your arm, so one of the bones was taking all of the resistance essentially. So if I would have played on, I probably would have snapped the other one and been in a worse condition. So yeah, I had to come off, and then went to the hospital and had to have like an operation on my arm. I think I was out for like 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks or something. I had to have like a plate and all, like staples in my arm. So at any time I go to an airport now and there's a metal detector, it kind of goes off because of the metal plates in my arm. So yeah, that wasn't like the greatest start. So I was out for like 6 weeks, and then I'd come back. I think there was only 11 games left of the actual season. So yeah, I managed to play the rest of the 11 games. I think I scored 7 in 11 games. Yeah, it was quite successful because of the team I had gone to was kind of like a mid-tables team. So we did quite well. I don't think we lost a home game. I think we did all right away from home. So it was, although I had a bit of a bad, unlucky start with breaking my arm, it was quite a good platform to go to Bursaspor in the summer of the following year.
So you eventually get to Bursaspor. You have 2 years there. What's it like from where you have been to stepping up to the first division in Turkey?
Yeah, it was massive difference. Obviously, with like funding, they could literally order all types of sports equipment, even just having like GPSs on you to track, what you were running in training, and just the amount of staff. They had like multiple physios, masseurs, club doctors, and more in the leagues that I was playing in. You had one masseur, you had a kit man. You had a physio, there was no club doctor, you had one head coach, an assistant, and a goalkeeper, whereas here it was just like, there was almost as many like staff as there was actual like players. So that was obviously surreal. And then obviously just thinking like, wow, like how have I managed to kind of strike lucky with this opportunity? Like, I was playing like a few divisions below, and not many people make the jump from essentially League 2 in England to the Premier League. It just doesn't happen. And I found myself like really fortunate, and I was there for the whole first years of pre-season. So we went to Austria. We played against a couple of different countries' teams. It was a really good experience. We were training at like high altitude and all that. The coach at the time was Paul Le Guen. He used to manage for Rangers. I think he's currently managing a team in France's league, like championship level, essentially. I think he's there now. So it was good to have an English-speaking coach, essentially. But yeah, just the players were just a lot better, essentially. You had international players playing for their countries that were in that squad, and obviously I was just a kid from a lower league team with no like mass experience or anything like that. But yeah, it was really good to kind of be a part of and to be involved with. And then ultimately it came to the fact that I spoke with the head coach of that year, and he said, obviously I'm a new coach here, and obviously you're a young player who's come from, because this coach that was actually head of Bursaspor at the time wasn't the coach that signed me, unfortunately, so he didn't really know a lot about me as well. He basically just said, like, look, your playing time will probably be very limited. It's probably best that you go out on loan, essentially. So I said, yeah, okay, no worries. It was a good experience, and obviously I want to keep playing. I don't want to just be at a team where I'm kind of struggling to even make the bench, essentially. So I got some offers from other teams, but they kind of forced me to go back to the second team, which I'd already been at, Yeshil Bursa, and I wasn't really too happy about that because of teams from higher leagues that were offering like better money and stuff like that wanted me, but they basically said, if you go there, we won't take you back, essentially. It wasn't necessarily the coach that was saying that. It was more kind of the people, in and behind the club. So although I did like being there at Yeshil Bursa, I did think like I could play at a higher level, a higher tier, and I thought that would benefit me more. But yeah, I ended up going back to Yeshil Bursa for the following season.
And how did that go?
Yeah, so it wasn't as successful as my first season. There was a lot of changes. The coach had changed. It was a much younger team this year. I was one of the oldest players at 23, and I think I managed to play about 25 games. I'd been injured quite a little bit. I'd torn my hamstring in a game, and then about 4 or 5 weeks later, I came back for my first game back from injury, and I'd torn it straight away. After 5 minutes, I had to come off again, and I'd redone that. So I missed quite a lot of games through injury, but again, it was good to kind of like play, almost be in the team like every week, starting in the position that you wanted to play in. But it was a difficult season. I think there was 3 managers in that year, and ultimately I would have liked it to have been better. But fortunately, I was able to still go back to Bursaspor the following year for another pre-season, which was positive, I suppose.
Yeah, and then your final club in Turkey was a team called Bursaspor.
Yeah, Bursaspor. So that's also quite local to Bursa. I'd returned back to Bursaspor for another pre-season. Same again, really. I'd done quite well, but ultimately the coach had said, like, look, you'd struggle for minutes. Essentially, we want you to go back on loan. And I basically said, like, I've only got 1 year left in my contract, so there's no point me going out on loan to, you go out on loan and then you're out of contract then, essentially. So I ended up cancelling my contract with Bursaspor, and I went to Bursaspor for, I think I signed a 1 year deal. So my plan was, okay, I'm going to get this 1 year in a team in a higher league, and then I'm going to go back to England the following year and try and go on trial, essentially, and see what I could do. So Bursaspor was interesting. They were a team that kind of essentially the previous season had pumped a lot of money into the club to get promoted, and ultimately fell at the last hurdle. So they were struggling quite a lot financially, but I thought it would be an opportunity to kind of get minutes, essentially. So I went there. I knew one of the assistant coaches because he was one of the coaches at Physio, so he basically recommended me there. So I think I played 11 games out of 18. Again, it was a mix, kind of first 11 on the bench, coming off the bench and stuff like that. And then it came to January, and I think I'd probably been paid about 1 month's wages. And in fear of what had happened to me at Physio, of me losing all that money and leaving in January, I actually took them to court. which kind of basically what happens is you write to the federation, which would be the English FA, stating how much money you're owed and stuff. And it basically gives the club an ultimatum that you have to pay this money to the player within 28 days, or if not, they can cut free. And essentially you still are owed that money at a later date. So I thought, I'm not having the same thing what happened at Physio where I lost all my money. I'm going to write to the federation. And the 28 days went by and they hadn't paid me. So that meant in the January transfer window, I was free to do what I wanted. And was hopeful that I was going to get my money at the end of the season, because if they wasn't going to pay, they were going to face a transfer ban and points deductions and stuff like that. This is quite common in Turkey because of, they struggle financially. They sign players on big contracts, from abroad and stuff, and ultimately they don't have the funds, essentially. So yeah, in January I'd left, and an opportunity came about me going to Macedonia. So in January, the coach was the Turkish coach. He used to play for Galatasaray. I used to watch him. Me and my dad used to watch him as a kid. So it was quite starstruck the first day I went there, because he was a legend, like, Turkish player. And I went to Macedonia. Thought, I'll experience going to a new country, see what that's like. So obviously I'd spent 6.5 years in Turkey. And just thought, why not? And I could just sign a 6-month contract, see that out, and I thought it'd be a good reference to then go to England and see what I could do. So it was called Scoopy, the team, and in Macedonia it's similar to like Scotland. There's only like 12 teams in the league, but ultimately, if you win that league, you get to go to the Champions League, and then like second and third get to go to Europa League. So that was the team's objective, was to try and get qualification into Europe. And I just thought, that'd be a pretty cool thing to put on my CV, that you've been involved in qualifying for the Champions League or Europa League or whatever. So I joined there, played every single game. I think just one game I was on the bench, which I came on, and it was good. It came to the last game of the season. We were playing a team which was, I think we were third and they were fourth, or it might have been the other way around, and we were playing away from home and we had to win. For us to win the game, we would get that Europa League qualification, going to the Europa League qualifying stages. And so it was a big game, and it was actually played in Macedonia's national team's stadium. I can't remember what the arena is called now, but anyway, it's like a 40,000 seater stadium. United played Real Madrid there in a Champions League. Like the winner of the Champions League and the winner of the Europa League, they play like a game, don't they? They played there, so it was a really big stadium. But for some reason, they weren't allowed fans in that particular game. It was nothing to do with COVID, but just for some reason, like there was allowed no fans. It was in an empty stadium. And we played like a really good game, and it came to, I think it was like the 75th minute, and we went 1-0 behind. And obviously, our only way to get to the Europa League was to win the game. So it came to like I think it was the 89th minute. Somebody had crossed in, and I was at the back post, and I just basically it was kind of like an open goal, so I just tapped it in. And then again in like the 92nd minute, somebody did a cross. I think it's one of the first ever headers I've ever scored. And I managed to jump higher than my opponent and head it in, and everyone just went crazy. All of the subs bench, the coaches, they all ran onto the pitch, and everyone was celebrating. Like, I was running to one end of the ground, and literally everybody else were running that way. So I was celebrating by myself, looking around like, yo, why the hell is nobody like chasing me? I've just scored like the winner to take us to the Europa League. And there's actually a video of it, and I just look an absolute clown running by myself. But that was kind of the highlight of being there, was that game, and then securing the following season's Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that video, and I think if anyone wanted to search it up, they'd be able to find it. And it was the scenes were quite mad. So before we move on to when you came over to England, like you said, you've spent 7 years abroad now playing football. How hard was it going over and playing abroad 7 years by yourself when your family's back in England, and what was that like?
Yeah, definitely. Especially at 18, going to a country that, although I am Turkish, I was born and bred in England. I didn't have any Turkish friends. All my friends in school were English, and I had no real insight to what life was like in Turkey. And obviously, with being in a city where not many people spoke English, it was very difficult. I remember, ringing up my dad, because obviously I'm very close with my family, and my dad is very kind of influential on what I do football wise as well, and saying like, "Oh, I can't do it." Nobody's like me. Everyone's completely different. All I'm basically doing is playing football and then just sitting down waiting all day. I found it very boring at times. I didn't really like the city that I was in. So it was very, very difficult. I think towards the later end of kind of moving to Macedonia, I kind of thought of it as a bit more of an experience, like living in multiple countries. I thought it would be quite cool, and being able to see a city in a random country. Not many people go to Macedonia, for example. So in my later life, I thought it was quite good, but definitely at the start, it's very, very difficult, especially in a country like Turkey, which is completely different to England. But I think it helps you as a person. You get to see what some people live like, and you can kind of adapt them qualities to your personality, maybe. So yeah, it was very challenging, but it was a good experience ultimately.
Yeah. So you come back over to England, and then that's where we crossed paths. But before we crossed paths, you had trials at quite a few different clubs, didn't you? Before you eventually came to Stalybridge. How was it trying to find a trial, considering that you did have experience at quite a good level abroad, and then to ultimately do the trials and then not be successful? What was that like?
Yeah, to be honest, I hate trials. It's like, I don't know, maybe doing an exam or an interview for like work or whatever. It's very daunting. You're kind of the new guy that nobody really speaks to, or nobody knows, or trying to engage with what people are talking about. They're talking about experiences where you were not even there. It's quite hard to kind of get to terms of that. So when I first came, I think the first club I went on trial with was Bradford. I think it was a 1-week trial, which was really good. Obviously, they were a League 2 team. I think they'd just been relegated from League 1 the season before. So I think the club was quite new. But yeah, that was at the very start of the pre-season. I thought it went quite well. I managed to play one friendly game, and I thought I did quite well as well. But ultimately, he just basically said, like, look, we've got several wingers, and it would be quite difficult for you to play in this team. I wouldn't say you're worse than anyone, but I wouldn't say you're better than anyone, essentially. So he said, like, but look, if you ever want to go on trial with anybody else, you can always use me as a reference, as I do think you are a good player. So yeah, I understood that, and then from that, I ended up going on trial with Barrow. So that season, Barrow actually won the National League, and now they're in League 2. So I went there. We played a friendly game against, I think I trained there like 3 or 4 days, and we played a pre-season friendly against, I think it was Lancaster, who were in our divisions in the Northern Premier League. And I played really well. I'd scored one, I'd assisted one, and I'd won a free kick, which basically the guy basically scored the free kick. So I don't know if that's an assist or whatever, but I thought I played well. And Ian Everett at the time, he said, like, yeah, you played really well, like, keep continuing coming to training. So I continued going to training for like another week, and then it basically came down to funding. Basically, he said ultimately again, and even in training, I remember training and we were doing like exercises like crossing and finishes. There was like 8 or 9 wingers. It was just like crazy. He said like, look, we've got X amount of money and we've got this amount of players essentially. And again, he basically said like, I think you're good, but essentially it comes down to the chairman and with funding and stuff like that. So that was quite disappointing. Another kind of setback, which made me just think like, oh, for fuck's sake, like I don't like trialing. I've been unsuccessful twice now. And at that same time, I was actually trialing with York, which were National League North, at the same time as trialing with Barrow. But ultimately, it came to a stage where I had to choose to trial with one or the other. So I had chosen Barrow, and then ultimately didn't get in. And then York didn't need me afterwards. So yeah, I found myself in a bit of a tricky situation then, because I tried at a couple of clubs and been unsuccessful at a couple of clubs. So then there was kind of talk about me going back to Turkey or another country to try and play there, which is basically I didn't want to do, but my dad was kind of suggesting it as something to do because of that there wasn't any luck around here. So I came to a decision where I was going to see one last try basically. So I basically emailed a bunch of teams like my CV. And then Stalybridge and you was one of the people that responded, and I think it was you, Atherton, and another team in like the Greater Manchester area had invited me down to train. Was it? Yeah, Ashton. And I'd come down to Stalybridge, and I think it was the ground was really nice, and the guys there, and I spoke to the gaffer. And obviously I'd spoken to you quite a lot on that training because the lads were doing quite a bit of running, because I think the previous game they had lost or something, so I didn't have to do it. So I just spent a lot of the session speaking to you. And I just thought like this is cool, it's local, and I think I can play in this team, and hopefully that will, I'll do well and be able to kick on or something like that. So yeah, that was when I essentially signed for Stalybridge Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. So when we received your email, it came with a video, and I remember putting it in to a message to the gaffer, and we just couldn't believe what we'd seen. Basically, it was like, and I think it is public that you can see the video. I think is it on YouTube?
Yeah, but I think I've got like
yeah, and I think the first like 3-4 goals are all like 30, 35 yard screamers. I was like, what is going on here? Like, we can't believe our eyes. And that's when we messaged you and asked you to come down to training. And you told us that you'd played, you played for Bolton Wanderers under 23s in a trial?
So I think I'd been invited to just play like a game or two with the under 23s, just to try and like maintain fitness.
Yeah, and then so you told us that, and he was like getting to sit out the first bit of the session, and I think we watched you in the second half, and we remember just speaking afterwards and was like, he's just always just signing. The gaffer actually said to me, he was like, just like speak to him as much as you can and like make it look great here, how good it is and stuff like that, to try and convince him to come here. And I think you signed, and I remember your dad were happy that you signed here originally. But yeah, then the rest is history. I mean, you've played 40 games for us now, which is not as many as we probably hoped for because of COVID, but it's been good having you so far. So we'll talk a bit more about your Stalybridge Celtic career. You've been here 18 months now. I think I remember your first game. We couldn't believe it, like how good you were in the first game. I don't know how you didn't score, but then after that, we went on a good run, didn't we? And we had an all right season. You ended up winning Fans Player of the Season, and you won a Player of the Month award in the season. Just tell me what it's like, how you found your Stalybridge experience so far, and anything about the Stalybridge career that you've enjoyed so far? There's been a few highlights. You've scored in the derby on Boxing Day and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can only look back at Stalybridge as last season as a really good as a good time. You know, I just was loving football. You know, anytime it was Tuesday night or Thursday night and I had training, I was just buzzing for it. You know, ultimately at other teams, you know, you might be like, oh, I'm a bit tired, I don't want to go and train, but I never felt like that at Stalybridge. You know, the lads in the changing rooms were really funny. Everyone got along, you know, staff and players. And yeah, it was just a really good environment to kind of be in. And then obviously we had a really good run, I think, around Christmas time when I can't remember how many games we went unbeaten, but it was a really good period, and there was a lot of momentum behind us that we wanted to actually kind of push for promotion. And we had really good players. You know, we had Hobbo and Darius up front, which worked really well. We had good attacking fullbacks with Deck and Callum, and the team was kind of quite stable. There wasn't many changes. That, you know, it seemed to be the same team was playing. I think that kind of benefited us. And then yeah, probably the highlight is playing at Hyde on Boxing Day. You know, in Turkey, I've never kind of experienced playing on Boxing Day because it's not really celebrated like it is over here. And with it being a derby, there was just shitloads of fans, wasn't there? And the atmosphere was great. And just after the game, like, I'd actually scored and then got sent off. I mean, that's just like a classic derby, isn't it? And ultimately we won. And then, like, at the final whistle, there was like a fight that was breaking out in the middle of the pitch, which was crazy. And you know, fans came running on, and it was. If I look back at some of my favourite ever games being involved in, I'd probably put that up there in top 3, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably not scored as many goals as you'd like to, but you've scored some good ones. I mean, I know I don't like to mention this game, but the Longridge game was a very good goal to equalise in the FA Cup. That was a good one. Gainsborough game again. That was another good goal on your week 4. Ultimately, that game didn't end as we liked, but there have been some highlights in there, definitely. When you talk about that last season where we was on a good run for promotion, do you think if there was no changes in the squad and obviously Darius going, do you think we'd have got close without COVID?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it might be easy to say that, but we were going into games thinking we're going to win, we're going to smash them as well. It wasn't like, oh, it's a tough game. I remember we played like South Shields away, and South Shields were flying at the time. And I think we ultimately lost 2-1, and we gave away a penalty in like the last second or something like that. And we played really good that game, and we were going into, like, for example, Hyde away. You know, we dominated them and we played really well. And loads of other games that I can't think from the top of my head, but you know, the team was really good. You know, Darius was scoring all the time. You know, you had Bakker, who was involved in goals, Hobbo holding it up, and the defence was quite solid as well. But yeah, ultimately, I would have preferred to have scored more goals. You know, I probably had a lot of chances to score and I'd missed quite a lot, but I always felt like whenever I played for Stalybridge, in general, I kind of played good, and I always worked my socks off and stuff like that. But yeah, ultimately, you kind of get based on your goals and assists. And if I had to look back at that season, I would have hoped to have scored more and assisted more. But then obviously it got kind of called off because of COVID, didn't it? Which was really shit. But yeah, really good team. Yeah. I think if the team would have stayed together, I think we would have done a lot more better than what we ended up doing.
Yeah, I mean, I know you said you wish you'd have scored more and you get to the top of that, but clearly the fans took to you when they give you that award. I know we didn't get to celebrate or anything like that, but it must have been a bit of an honour to get a Player of the Season award, especially when you didn't start the season there as well. You came halfway through.
Yeah, definitely. I think I joined after about 10 or 11 games, and even getting like the Player of the Month for January was just like a massive honour. From other teams that I played for, there was never really that kind of like Player of the Month, Player of the Season kind of trophy sort of recognition. So it was the first time I'd ever experienced being, given Player of the Month or something like that. And then obviously at the end to be awarded Fans Player of the Month, albeit maybe 90% of the votes probably from my dad or whatever. But yeah, I felt great when I'd won that. You ultimately feel good about yourself, like you've done a good job. But yeah, being critical, obviously, you want numbers, don't you? You want goals, you want assists, but something that I tried to improve on a little bit this year. I think I scored 5 last year, and I think, was it 9 games we played? I think I scored 3. So I'd already beaten half of it in that amount of games. But yeah, was really pleased when I found out that I'd won that.
Yeah, hopefully we can see more Ustabasi goals at Barford in the distant future.
The
Burner Bower. So obviously you've had a taste a couple of times of trials at like league clubs and stuff like that. Before we move on to some more questions about your Stalybridge teammates and stuff, how does it essentially, because we're part-time, we train 2 times a week, you took the opportunity to go to UA92, and you're a student there at the moment doing a bachelor's in, is it sports and exercise science?
Yeah.
How do you find that fitting in with your football as well, and how you find your course?
Yeah, so obviously when I joined Stalybridge, it was part-time, so I wanted to do something in the day, whether that be some sort of part-time job or dive into education. Obviously, I had joined UA92 when I was 25, so I'd left when I was 18, so a 7-year gap without education, is quite a while, and you forget quite a lot of the things that you were taught. But ultimately, football's a short career, isn't it? We don't play in the Premier League where at 35 you can kind of just kick a fat one and not have to worry about financial problems or anything like that. So I wanted to get a degree in something which, when I finished playing football, ultimately benefits me financially and is something that I enjoy. So I thought going to UA92 it was a new university which is opened by the class of '92, and it's only right around the corner from where I am. So I'm in Sale, and it's in Trafford, near Old Trafford Cricket Ground, and it just fits so well. So I'll be there from 9 till 1, and then we'd have training at 7 till 9 or whatever. So just the kind of schedule just fitted in really well, and then being able to get a part-time job working with Foundation 92, which is like a charity-based sports program for, it's linked with Salford City, and it offers sport to young people within Salford. So another kind of path of something, within the sports industry, getting experience and being able to do that instead of, your generic job, maybe working at Tesco or whatever. So yeah, I kind of thought mainly for the future with the degree. And when I complete the course, hopefully I'll do like a master's degree and then, end up getting a job or something. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Is this something you're hoping to be able to go on to do once you've got qualifications?
I don't know. I keep changing my mind, but at the moment, I do like the idea of maybe being a physio. I know Steve-O's a physio, and I find it quite interesting in how the body kind of heals, and the right practices you have to do to try and accelerate healing, and I think that would be something that I would be quite interested in doing. Maybe one day working for a sports team as a physio, or maybe like Steve-O does, work for the NHS. I don't know, that's kind of the path that I'm kind of thinking of right now. But, it does change. Next week I might want to be a sports scientist or something. I don't really know.
That's you could be the new Dave Pover.
Yeah,
you wanted to
take his job.
I don't think he'd like you saying that.
When he retires.
So before I said the next few questions, you're currently on loan at Chorley in the National League North. Just tell us a bit about how come you've ended up going to Chorley on loan. I know a few fans will be a bit sceptical as to why you got on there, but just make a bit more sense of it for them while you're here.
Yeah, so obviously with the Northern Premier League, it's been postponed since, when was it postponed? Like November, was it, or something?
Yeah, towards the end of November.
Yeah, November. And ultimately, I just didn't want to be sat around. With uni, it was online uni, so not really getting out of the house. And then with working with Foundation 92, I was put on furlough. So ultimately, I just wanted to kind of get out and do something, essentially, and obviously play football, which is what I love to do. So I ended up ringing you about it, didn't I, and saying, like, look, what would be the possibilities of me maybe going out on loan for a month or until whenever the season starts back up again, because I knew that there was a player in our team who had come from Marine, so I knew it was maybe possible to do. And then obviously you asked, some clubs about, whether I could go. And then it came to Chorley said that they were interested, because obviously Irfan, or we know him as coach, was at Stalybridge last year. So obviously he knew me, and then obviously he gave me that opportunity to kind of go to Chorley. And I've been there for a month. Managed to play, like, my first start was last weekend. Because they were involved in that FA Cup run, weren't they? And then, which obviously I wasn't eligible to play in. And then there was a 2-week kind of pause for the National League as well. So I managed to play last week, which was really good to kind of be back out there and play. We played against Gloucester, who were top of the league, and I think we drew 1-1. So it was quite a good away point. We were unlucky not to win, I think. But yeah, ultimately just being able to kind of train, even at least go out and play football is, was really important to me, and, was credit to you and credit to everyone involved in kind of letting me go out there on loan.
That's no problem. And so we'll come back to Stalybridge again now. And just a few questions about sort of your teammates and stuff like that. Who do you think is the best player you've played with in your time at Stalybridge so far?
I mean, there were several good players. Obviously, you look at numbers and impact, and you'd probably have to say Darius, wouldn't you? I mean, obviously he's a great striker, and he ended up transferring to South Shields, which was last season by far the best team in the league, in my opinion. And obviously he was a match winner, wasn't he? He scored goals in vital situations. He was fast, he was strong, he was able to hold up the ball and technically good at dribbling. So in terms of like a goal scoring ability, Darius was really influential, especially in that period when we were doing well. But you look at other players as well. You had like Deck, who, I don't know how many assists he got from right back in that league, which was which was mad. You had Denty in midfield, who was just battling all the time and gave 120% every time. You had Baka, who could score, he could assist, he could run, he could defend. So there was a lot of players who I thought were really good. But I think if you have to look at the best player, you'd probably say Darius, wouldn't you? Who was really good impact for us.
Before we move on, how did you find it compared to playing abroad for 7 years and then coming into the Northern Premier League and playing games like that?
I'd say it's definitely more physical. Playing in Macedonia and Turkey, if you got a touch basically and you went down, it's very, very likely they would award a foul. Whereas in England, sometimes you have to be kind of shot to get a foul. It feels sometimes, you've got some guy pulling your shirt, some guy kneeing you, So in terms of physicality, it's a lot different. I'd also say that the tempo of the game is a lot quicker here, whereas in Turkey, you're playing sometimes in 30, 35 degree heat. It's quite a lot slow, possession-based football, whereas sometimes teams over here are more direct. Maybe they have a big target man and they just look to play around him. So there's definitely different styles, but ultimately I would say probably the physicality and maybe the tempo are the two main differences, definitely.
Yeah. Have you found it working under Simon?
Yeah, brilliant. I've loved working with Simon, and obviously one of the reasons why I stayed the following year was because of Simon. I always felt like I was confident under his management. Some games last year I'd maybe not performed as well, but I was always still in the team. I think the first game I actually played was on the bench. The rest of them I was always, first 11. So, having a manager that kind of believed in you was I thought was really good. And obviously with him being an attacker himself, being able to kind of learn from him, and ultimately you want to score more goals, don't you? And obviously Simon in his career was a goal scorer. So, and then against that, just a great kind of character as well. So down to earth, and credit to him basically.
So carrying on with your teammates and stuff, who do you think the funniest player in your 2 seasons so far has been? There's been quite a few.
Yeah, there was quite a few. I mean, there's people that were funny which weren't even meant to be funny, like Khalid. I mean, some of the things that he would come out with was just hysterical, but not intentionally. So you've got people like him. You've got the Warrington lads of Deccan and Backer who were really funny as well. But I think Hobbo was probably the funniest. Some of the things that he would say or just like act out would just crack me up. Like on the group chat. I mean, even the gaffer was really funny as well. Sometimes you'd leave your phone for a few hours and then you'd look back and you've got about 150 messages from the group chat, and you'd just literally be laughing out loud reading some of the messages. Like honestly, I've never been involved with such a bunch of players, which was so funny. Like you just loved going to training because it was hilarious a lot of the time. A lot of the stick was aimed at you and it was just hilarious. But you take it so well like a champion. Credit to you on that, but yeah, definitely a lot of funny characters in the team.
So you've not really had much opportunity to go out with the lads from this year, like last year, with everything going on. But out of the 2 seasons, does a player come to mind that was the worst dressed that you've seen at the club?
Worst dressed. Well, yeah, like you say, from this season, we haven't really been out, so there's no one who you can really highlight. I'd probably have to go for the easy option of maybe Khalid. Not necessarily that he dresses poorly, but he dresses like he's maybe a pop star or something like that. You'd maybe say him. I know there was one time that you dressed and I think you were wearing like 3/4 pants and your ankles were proper showing. I think you got a lot of banter for that.
Yeah.
But to be fair, there's no one that really comes to mind who I think like, oh God, his dressing is awful. Maybe me. I'm very basic with my dressing. I wouldn't say I'm like a fashion icon or anything. It's genuinely when I go out, just some jeans and a jumper and some shoes, so it might be a bit boring in terms of that, but yeah, I think I'd probably say Khalid just because he's young and he dresses like he's young as well, like an aspiring pop star or something like that maybe.
He'll probably take that, to be fair to him.
Yeah.
And then so again with all the players, if you could pick a 5-a-side team to go and win a 5-a-side league from the players you've got that you played with in Stalybridge, you can include yourself, and you don't have to have a goalkeeper. Who would you pick?
Right. I wouldn't include myself because in a short-sided game I'm awful. The only thing I've got is a bit of pace, so I need a big pitch to be able to show that off maybe. So. Let's think. I'd probably put. I'm going to go with a goalkeeper because of I think that's. I'm going to go with the Slovak cat, Alex. He was a great guy to be around. He was very he was a good shot stopper, and obviously coming from United, he has that experience, and he was a good guy off the pitch as well. I always spoke to him and was always very fond of him. Then I'd probably say Fiveaside. In defence, I'd probably go with Callum. Very strong, very athletic. Good with his left and good with his right. So I'd probably put him at the back, probably alongside. Go on. I'll put Stevo in there as well. Why not? Maybe not the quickest, but he's the leader of the team. He's gonna make sure everyone's doing the job. And in some training sessions when we're doing Fiveaside, he does go on little mazy runs as well. So from the back, it's quite good. Then I think we've got 2 more spots, then, haven't we? So I'll probably go with Darius up front, score all the goals and work for the team. And then probably in terms of a Fiveaside, it might be quite a rogue one, but I'd probably choose Neil. I thought in training, when I'd actually first come to Stalybridge, in training, I thought he was amazing. Like, he was so strong, so technically gifted and stuff like that, and he really stood out to me in training. So I think in a small-sided game, I think he'd be very good, So yeah, I'd probably choose Neil.
Yeah, it's not a bad team, that. A lot of pace in there as well, though.
Yeah, not too much. Not too much necessary technical ability or anything, but a lot of pace and power and maybe direct football.
And then, before we go, have you got any stories of your times in football that stand out and you think people like to hear?
I don't know. You kind of asked me this before, didn't you? And I was kind of hoping that one would kind of come to my mind. At the end, I'd probably say one of the funniest ones is the video of me celebrating by myself. The whole team when I was in Macedonia and I'd scored, the whole team of running one side of the pitch and I'm kind of just literally running and then looking behind, looking to see if anyone's actually celebrating with me, and I look a right clown. And then probably one of the highlights is the Hyde game as well. It was just a great game, great atmosphere on Boxing Day. But yeah, other than that, I can't really think of any other like great kind of moments that come from the top of my head, really. Sorry to be a bit boring, but yeah, I'd probably say those.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, that will bring us to a close. It's been good to talk to you, learn more about your career. Obviously, I've spoken to you before, but not this much in depth. And hopefully, when times are better, we'll see you back at Bowerfold and back on the Bernabeu.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me on. It's been really good, and we want you to be on Talk Random next week, don't we?
Yeah. So I'll come and return the favour and come on your podcast.
Yeah,
so if anyone wants to go and watch John's podcast as well, he does a podcast with Abs from his uni. So go and give that a look as well. You'll probably see it on his Twitter or something like that. So yeah, thanks for coming, John, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's see you in a bit.